you tell me a little bit more about the day of Frodo being put down?
That's hard. You get into medicine to do everything you can to help them, and now you're being told to do a job that you know hasn't exhausted every form that it should.
Alleged labor law violations and mistreatment of animals are just some of the complaints she and other board members received from employees against Melinda Bustos, the board president.
I know these things to be facts. These things being animals being euthanized, just shady activity.
We all knew dogs went missing. Everybody suspected that the dogs had been euthanized, but they actually found bodies.
When she took over the animal hospital, she said, "I'm getting rid of all these pit bulls and a bunch of these old cats." And I said, "Whoa now, don't be foolish. All of these animals that you're discussing on getting rid of better have a lot of physical and be very sick, because no veterinarian is going to euthanize an animal just because you said so."
When she made that call, she wasn't anywhere in the desert. She wasn't even here. She was forcing other people to do her dirty work. I do believe that it was harassment at some point. They were very harassing and menacing phone calls. She would talk to me in very condescending tones. And it was her way or no way.
Their whole premise over there is not adoption, it's fundraising.
She controls everything, and it's disturbing to me.
In addition to an alleged hostile work environment and labor law violations, Joyce says that board member, who we aren't naming because an investigation is just getting started, isn't treating animals properly.
Frodo was a medium-sized dog, beautiful. Beautiful fur, short fur, very shiny, floppy ears, probably not older than a year and a half.
He actually came to the shelter as a 8-week-old puppy. His whole litter had come to the shelter and they all got parvo. And he was the only survivor from that litter. That's why his name is as big as it is, because he was a staple to one of the dogs that was saved.
This dog was financially supported because this woman wanted to keep this dog but couldn't. And so it was in his best interest to make sure that all of his needs were met. He had, his financial support that went above and beyond what a dog would accumulate in a month. And that money was still being taken, but there was no updates provided on how that dog was doing. The Humane Society stands for the ethical treatment of animals. They're going to be following evidence-based practices. They're going to be following standards of care, and that doesn't occur.
When I was still invited to the Humane Society, they said, do you want to see Frodo? And I said, yeah, I want to see Frodo. Frodo was clear on the other side of the campus, not even by all the dogs. He was clear over, and he was in a cage, probably 8 by 6, and all chain linked in, and anything barking like mad. That was about 1 to 2 days before he was euthanized. Frodo ended up, they took him over to the hospital. He sat in a cage there for a couple hours, and they gave him the shot. Nobody really was prepared for that.
That's a hard one. That is one that I was there for, and I, at the end of the day, had to live with that.
She killed him. She had the staff at the hospital put him to sleep. If you're going to be euthanizing animals, they better be very sick, very injured, and not savable, because people give us money to run our rescues to rescue and save animals. And isn't that in their mission statement, to rescue, to heal, and what's the rest of it? Rachel Reedy was the vet there at the time, and her last straw was when Melinda showed up with a basket of puppies and wanted them euthanized. And she said no.
In one case, Essex says employees stated they were ordered to euthanize dogs without cause.
Melinda had brought the dogs, insisted that they were euthanized, put enough pressure on employees who are vulnerable and don't have any way to defend themselves. And from that standpoint, they carried out the euthanization. The dogs were turned over to the shelter team, and both of the gentlemen at the shelter tell me that it was mandated that they bury them in the desert.
Melinda brought in 2 10 to 16 week old puppies that she wanted euthanized. They were born feral, so they had no socialization. They had no idea what that meant. Human contact was completely foreign to them. And I took those dogs home for a year. I knew if they went back to the shelter, Melinda would find a different outlet to get rid of them. And that wasn't an option.
Well, when you're bringing in happy, healthy, adoptable dogs and you're asking for them to be put to sleep for no legitimate reason, that's not okay.
Doctor and I refused to do it. We would not euthanize puppies.
I didn't want to euthanize the dogs, and the staff didn't want to euthanize the dogs, the puppies. I was like, who's going to do that, right?
When we told her no, that was really when the snowball started rolling.
Well, I'm sorry. It's my DEA license. It's my veterinary license. You don't get to tell me to put down healthy animals.
I reached out to Bustos via phone and email. When asked about the mistreatment of animals, she replied in an email, in part, "There has never been any mistreatment of animals to my knowledge."
It's a horror story, really.
Carmen is a member of the board, and she tells us, according to employees' statements, Melinda Bustos, the board president, ordered employees to euthanize dogs after business hours, then bury them in the desert.
This accusation's come up before, and we just believed Melinda.
Animals disintegrate, bodies disintegrate, but microchips don't. And so they went out, and sure enough, ding, 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 there's the microchip.
Jonathan Nimitz is one of those people coming forward.
It's bringing back memories of when I buried them.
He's the shelter facility manager and claims Bustos harassed him until he carried out her request to bury the dogs' bodies. He says he's relieved to recover the dogs' remains and give them a proper resting place.
I'm not going to be looking over my shoulder and staring off in the direction that I buried them.
Ultimately, Frodo is ultimately what led to the hospital closing.
On the hospital closing, she writes, "There are no plans to close the animal hospital." But weeks prior, according to a source, this email was sent out, signed by Bustos, explaining the Desert Hot Springs Animal Hospital would be closed starting Tuesday, the 29th. A manager at the hospital says she received a phone call from the accused board member
That she was going to be closing the hospital down for 2 weeks and not to bother to report back to work.
The hospital was never shut down and continues to operate.
So one of the first things that happened is a lady named Marta came in as an office manager. And Marta is very by the books, make sure that everything's taken care of, everybody's got labor board laws, everybody's got workman's comp, everybody's got the things that they should have. She was in an exam room and the shelves, the cabinets literally fell off the wall and pinched her to a table. She was okay, but of course, we had her go and get checked out, and Melinda wouldn't allow her to use workman's comp or claim workman's comp. Something's not right here.
The way that Melinda worked is we were never allowed to claim overtime. Listed hours were 8 to 5. So if I was stuck in a surgery and it's now 6 o'clock, that whole hour after 5 o'clock, I never got paid for. Not just that, but I would say out of the 5 days that I worked, 4 of those I never got a lunch. California law, you not only are owed that hour, but you're owed an additional hour for not getting your lunch before your 5th hour. I never got that.
The entire staff at the hospital, everybody wrote letters to the board of directors.
Individual letters were sent to the board from employees, and after careful review during a meeting, the board voted to suspend the accused board member pending, quote, forensic accounting and an HR investigation into the employee's concerns.
As a board, we decided that we have a legal obligation to investigate their concerns.
It was a Sunday, I want to say around December 10th. I don't remember the date exactly, but it was like a week into December. I get a phone call, and it was very odd, very unusual phone call that told me that they were coming in and they were going to be closing down the hospital the next day.
Today we came into work and there was some look like security type officers out front demanding that we all enter through the front door and not the employee entrance, and we were all told that we did not have jobs today.
We were met at the hospital with security and the board members. And he never said anything to me about freaking security being there.
Security was supposed to be there before all of us got there, but I was already inside the building and they had no way to get in. So when they tried to come through the back door, I was already inside. Well, what are you doing in here? I work here. I'm supposed to be here.
Employees at the Animal Hospital of Desert Hot Springs shocked, saying the closure was handled poorly. Here at the hospital, there's just a note on the door that says they will be closed until early 2019. Employees say they have changed the locks and they can no longer get into the buildings.
They had already gone in and changed all the passcodes on all of the computer software systems, so we had no access to the computers or the software or anything.
They hadn't really thought any of it through. They didn't clear the books for that day, so we had clients walking in the front door asking what's going on.
My husband and I had our beloved dog Luke. The day I had the appointment to take the sutures out, I went down there and there was a camera crew and the doors were locked. You couldn't get into the building. All the employees were standing outside, and it's like, what the heck? How do I get these stitches out of my dog?
We were given no notice that we were going to come to work today and have no job. We just showed up today and we're told to get all of our stuff and get out. We're being chased around by security like we're criminals.
They basically made us feel like criminals.
We were treated like absolute criminals. And the whole board was there. It was very chaotic.
The business people in that had to do with that hospital were inside with the doors locked and they wouldn't let anybody in.
When I tried to speak to members of the board inside, I see that it's closed, but I would like to talk to somebody from the board to give you guys a fair opportunity. You guys have no comment to add to the story? They declined to comment and then emailed this statement saying they anticipate they will reopen next year.
The other thing about that, we have no records of our animals. So how do you do that? How do you get those?
These people were essentially left with nowhere to go and no way to get their records.
There's a number of us in Desert Hot Springs that have animals, and where do we take them? We have no hospital. We have no vet. And if you have an emergency, where do you take your animal?
All of my clients were being failed, and it was completely out of my hands. And it didn't matter how much of my soul that I gave that clinic and Melinda, it still wasn't enough.
Employees say it's suspicious since they were offered severance packages in exchange for their silence.
They tried to hand me a non-disclosure packet with a laughable check. I think it was like $1,200 at the time.
They owed me about $200,000 in bonuses because I was supposed to get 10% of the gross profits of the clinic. And in the 2 years that I had been there, we had grossed about $2 million. Now, instead of it being a resignation, it's now a termination, so they technically were supposed to pay me out the rest of the days I was supposed to work, which was a significant amount of money. So they offered me a whopping $4,000, and I had to sign a disclosure that allowed them to publish positive press releases with my name on them, but they were going to write them for a whopping $4,000.
They say most of the employees refused to sign.
Choosing to speak out instead of be put to silence.
If signing something meant that I could never talk about Melinda Bustos, then I was never signing something.
I wouldn't sign anything. I walked out of there.
It was laughable is what it was. While they tried to make it this big intimidating thing, at every turn they had failed. All everyone heard for the longest time was that, well, the shelter closed because the doctor quit. Well, that's not the truth. The clinic closed because there was fraud and lies and deceit, and it was finally being proven.
Tonight, we're revealing just how serious the possible misuse of donor funds could be for the Humane Society of the Desert. Plus, we've learned not only is the organization itself investigating what happened, so is the Sheriff's Department and now the IRS.
At that point in time, I reached out to a couple other board members, and I said, I really think you need to sit down and talk with me. There's things that just don't add up here. I knew what the numbers were coming into the clinic. The computer software program that we had, you can track the numbers in the production and the income. But when you get told that I don't get any bonuses because we don't have any money, and at the end of the year, I calculated there was between $200,000 and $400,000 not accounted for, so things don't add up.
In about 2018, she was asked to leave the board. And the reason for that was that she had tried to write herself, or did write herself.
A more than $4,000 check was written by the Humane Society to cover a Wells Fargo credit card balance in Bustos' name. The board suspended her to determine if any improprieties exist.
So I met with a couple of the board members who then provided me with a profit and loss balance sheet, because as a nonprofit, that should be publicly available, right? And on there, we start looking at it, and I start looking at some of the expenses, and she had an equine expense on there, $6,000 a month. This is a small animal rescue and a small animal hospital. Why is there $6,000 a month going out in horse expenses? I knew Melinda had personal horses.
We uncovered the Humane Society claimed more than $54,000 on horse care in its 2016 990 file with the IRS, almost 3 times as much as it spent to feed all the rest of its animals that year.
And that started leading to other things, where we started finding other discrepancies in money.
The credit card statements read like the itinerary of a luxury vacation, shopping spree, and pampering package all in one. Time at the Omni Rancho Las Palmas, the Riviera Palm Springs, the Miramonte Resort, and the La Quinta Resort. St. John, Sunglass Hut, and Gucci. Then Planet Beauty, Sephora, Hot Spot Tanning, plus
cosmetic surgery, Victoria's Secret. That's pretty blatant. Right?
$184.
Yeah, unless there's dogs wearing negligees.
The plastic surgeries, the Botox, the Victoria's Secrets, all the different procedures.
She would come in every other week with Botox that had been done, and then the credit cards that paid for all this, and she tried to write it off as it was donations for auction items for charity events.
True Care cosmetic surgery to the tune of several $1,000s a month.
A month?
Reams of documents obtained by News Channel 3 show hundreds of charges accrued and paid for on Wells Fargo and American Express business credit cards issued to the Humane Society of the Desert and former President Melinda Bustos.
Again, what does it have to do with a nonprofit organization? Nothing that I could see.
Or animals.
Or animals, right.
What would that constitute in the eyes of the IRS?
Fraud.
Forensic accountant Adam Ochoa was hired by the board to conduct a forensic investigation, which he summarized to the board in December.
Purchasing, at a department store or reimbursement for beauty care. It could be as high as $600,000.
The IRS agreed. Board minutes we obtained show an audit of the Humane Society revealed personal inurement. The IRS says 501c3s must not be operated for the benefit of the creator or their family or shareholders of the organization. Bustos not only sat on the board, so did her husband.
She and her husband recently moved to Arizona to a $1.35
million, nearly 5-acre property north of Phoenix, which boasts riding areas and a barn. She did not return numerous calls and emails for comment. Remaining board members say they are still untangling the finances resulting from that board turnover, while also trying to fulfill their mission to rescue, heal, protect, and adopt for life.
This is a new board with a new vision, with new standards.
As hopeful as the Humane Society is about the future, Wax and others believe there could be consequences.
You're getting public money and you're earning public trust, right? When you don't follow the rules, there's a price to pay.
Tonight, in my iTeam exclusive Dogs and Dollars, Bustos is back on the board. Hear why a local animal activist is outraged and why a newly appointed board member supports her return. So bottom line, you are comfortable with Melinda being back on the board?
Well, I'm comfortable that nothing bad happened in the past, and I'm ecstatic that she's here now.
Yeah, I want her gone. I want her in jail.
Two very different reactions to the return of former Humane Society of the Desert president, Melinda Bustos. Bustos never responded to our requests for an explanation or to defend herself. But Skip Coomber, an attorney and entrepreneur who joined the board a year ago, is now speaking out on her behalf, saying the purchases she made were auction items to help raise money for the animal shelter at galas and fundraisers.
Well, what she did is she put together packets for the affluent to bid on. And those items went right into the package that they would bid on. Like I said, we've researched that. We're very comfortable that nothing funny was going on.
Bustos has not been charged.
And we're very, very comfortable that nothing did happen other than maybe some sloppiness, not best practices.
According to the Department of Justice website, the Humane Society of the Desert is delinquent, and their state 501c3 status has been revoked.
It saddens me that there was never any resolution to all of the discrepancies that we found with Melinda, from the treatment of the animals, the treatment of the employees, the discrepancy in finances, that she was never held accountable.
If I won the lottery, I would get a high-powered attorney to go after the organization. You just have to, because this has been 20 years in the making.
I now think she just stayed in the shadows. She never left.
She, I fully think, controlled this board from being in another state.
She's back after stealing, after killing, after all of the shenanigans. And she's got these board people, these board members that don't live in the valley, by the way. The one guy on the news, Skip or Chip, whatever his name is, was saying we're so happy to have her back. How can you be happy to have somebody back that put a stain on your facility?
And they even brought her back. I mean, why? Why would you do that? You've had time and time again where people have come up and said, this woman is bad news. You've had people that have lived it. You've had clients that have lived it, and yet you refuse to see it. I just hope someday there's some accountability for it.